Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the daily Rambam Shiur. Lesson 153 will be concluding the 9th and 10th chapter of Hilchos Klei Hamishkon ve'Hoivdim Boi and the first chapter of Hilchos Biat Hamikdash. In a few days, at the holiest day of the year on Yom Kippur, there is a prayer that is being recited right towards the Seder Avodo, describes the entire services that used to take by the high priest at the high holiday of Yom Kippur in the temple. And we're describing Uvechein Manehedar Hoyo Mar'ei Kohen, how magnificent was, how awesome was the image of the high priest when he was coming out of the Kodesh HaKodoshim. And there is an entire description which was very much inspired by the garments he was wearing. The Talmud tells a beautiful story about a Gentile, a non-Jew, who was passing by a Jewish school and listening how the teacher was describing into beautiful details the type of garments that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, was wearing. He got so excited and he ran immediately to Shammai to express the desire to become Jewish. And about his question, what makes you want to be Jewish? He says, the great, fashionable, wonderful garments the Kohen Gadol is wearing. So immediately Shammai pushed him away and he ran to Hillel. Hillel says, great idea. Of course, I will convert you. But in order to get into any job, you got to go through the training. In this case, let's study the Torah. And he started to study. And at that point, he reached a pasuk where it says at the conclusion of the rules that priests and high priests need to follow, Vehazor HaKorev Yumus, someone who is foreign, someone who is not a Kohen, who is conducting and doing the job of the Kohen, he is subject to death. So he says, who is considered to be foreign? He says, anyone who is not a Kohen, including the king, even if the king himself or the greatest scholars who sits at the Sanhedrin decides he wants to service as a Kohen, he is subject to death. So then he realized, well, if a person who was born and raised and reached such high accomplishment, but nevertheless he is not a member of the tribe of Levi, and he gets into the job that doesn't belong to him, he is subject to death. How much more so I am? So he expressed his gratefulness to the special approach that Hillel adopted to educate him while he was studying and familiarizing himself with the concept of Yiddishkeit. And he says that the humility and the patience of Hillel was the one who brought him under the wings of the Shekhinah. So in today's chapter, the first section deals more into the details of the priesthood garments that they were wearing. So the first was the tzitz, which was basically a piece of gold in the width of 2 fingers, where the first line was written Lashem and the second Kodesh. The way it was appearing, the letters would project outward because a craftsman would engrave the letters on the back plate while it was pressed to a beeswax until they project. So they have holes from both sides in order for the psil tcheles to be able to go through the tzitz and tie the tzitz into the back of his head in order it should hold. Would we have a space between the tzitz and the mitznefes? Mitznefes was the head. A sufficient space in order to place the tefillin sheloish. The tefillin sheloish was on the forehead, right between the head, which is called the mitznefes, and the tzitz. The me'il, as we said, was a cot that was made. There is a few commentators who try to describe how the me'il look like. It's somewhere between judges in the court, sometimes even attorneys, barristers who appear in front of the court. They have a coat, a black coat, similar to this coat. However, the actual neck was entirely circled without any ability to open. There is an argument whether it looked similar to the shape of a talis cotton that we are wearing. The only difference that it was going till the floor, while a talis cotton goes somewhere way less. In the bottom of this coat used to hang rimonim. The literal translation of rimonim is pomegranates, but not real pomegranates. It was basically piece of material mixed with the tcheles and algomon, sky blue wool, red wool, and scarlet wool. The strength of each of those, they were spun into 8 folds, which means each and every fiber was double spun into 8 folds, and they were in a shape of round type of balls that were hanging in the bottom of his me'il. Right between them used to have pa'amoinim. Pa'amoinim are bells. And there is a very interesting explanation of the Rebbe. Why was it necessary for the Kohen Gadol to wear in the bottom of his me'il those bells that they must produce sound when he was walking to the Kodesh? And the Rebbe explains that since the Kohen Gadol was not only representing the Jewish people, not only a toning for them, but he was also reflecting in his personality a source of inspiration for the entire nation. Some people, they are calm, and some people are very stormy. They have lots of storm in them. When a person is in a state of panic, when a person is in a state of anxiety, when a person is nervous, he is not calm and he is not quiet. He is noisy. So the Kohen Gadol, he was not representing only those people who are righteous and pious and calm and stable, but he was also representing people who are running from evil. And a person, when he is on a run, he is anything but calm. He is anything but quiet. To say that he is stormy, that will be a more proper description. So the fact that they were al shulei hameil, on the bottom of the coat, represents people who are right now trying to move from the bottom. Even those people need to have the high priest taking care of them. In a much bigger picture, the Rebbe explains that today, in contrary to previous generations, where the display of Judaism on the street were not part of the typical service and conducting of Yiddishkeit. Yet today we are living in a time of Shulei HaMe'il, towards the end, towards the end of times, the time of Golus, and it is necessary, in order to inspire Jews who didn't have a chance to be exposed to their heritage, to their tradition, to make things on a noisy way, in a way that they will be exposed to it and hear about it, which explains the Rebbe's view why was it necessary to have mitzvah tanks and other public display of Judaism on the street, in order to awaken those people who are al shulei hameil, whether the me'il of the generations or whether the me'il of their stage, their level in observancy and spirituality. The total amount of those bells were 72 on both sides. Then
How big this bell?
the bells not big. They were basically, according to the picture, in a size of a small apple, but enough to make noise. And as you say, it was 36 in the front and 36 in the back, for a total of 72. On the second garment used to be the ephod. Ephod is the apron, and the choishen. Choishen was what he was wearing in front, and the way that he used to do, he used to take a material in a size of a half a meter, divided to two, so it became a square quarter of a meter, so I would say about 25 centimeters, and the right on top of it were the names of the tribes engraved on 12 different stones. Right on the tribe of Reuven, the name of Avraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov were added to his name, and at the bottom, the last tribe, Binyamin, the letters of Shiftei Ko, the tribes of God, were added to their name. The reason, because there is 4 letters that they are missing in the names of the tribes. So in order to fill up the missing letters, was necessary to add these extra words. The way that the choishen used to be connected to the ephod, to the apron, was via a ring and a chain made of gold that used to connect between the ring to the bottom part of the apron and to the upper part of the apron, where the Avnei Hashoyam, additional 2 stones, used to be right on his shoulders, and again on those stones, as opposed to the 12 stone that they were on his chest. Over here was only 2 stones. 6 names of the tribes were on one shoulder, and the other 6 tribes were engraved on the other type of the shoulder. There is also the reason why it was necessary to be attached with those chains, since it is written in the Torah, "Velo yizach hachoishen mi'al ha'ephod." The choishen should never be removed and detached from the ephod. A person who is removing deliberately, he is violating a lav, a negative commandment. The second chapter, the discussion about the order, how the Kohen was dressed, which garment he was wearing first. He started first with the pants, continuing with the shirt, next the belt, and just finishing with the mitznefes. When the high priest used to wear, so by him, after the belt, he used to wear his me'il, the coat, then the apron, then the choishen and tie it, and only then he used to put the mitznefes, the hat, and the tzitz. Any kohen who was missing one garment and he served in the state of missing a garment, it's called mechusar bgodim, he is subject to heavenly death and his service is disqualified. Same thing if a kohen adds a garment, even a shmate, a piece of material greater than 3 by 3, 3 finger by 3 finger, it already turns him to extra garment, and he is again subject to the same consequences as if he would be missing a garment. Any other garments were forbidden for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, like yesterday we were asking if underneath the mitznefes or underneath the michnosayim he was wearing anything, and the answer was no. And the reason for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, as we have learned, that a person who adds a garment, he is exactly in violation as if he would be missing a garment. But then there is also another reason. It says, "Vehoyo al besoy ulevation." The garment should be directly on his flesh, on his skin. Shelo yechoitzetz, nothing should separate between the garment and the skin. And any type of separation, even not a garment, if it is a dirt, if it is a worm or anything else, is also a violation of the needs that nothing should separate between the garment and his flesh. Everybody who read the Torah knows that was something called Urim veTumim. Loosely translated, Urim is the light and Tumim is the completeness. It's a reference to, and this is an argument, what were they consisting of? According to the Rambam, seemingly they were just those stones that we have mentioned. According to the Raavad and other commentators, used to be the Shem HaMefurosh, the name of God spelled on a parchment and stuck somewhere in the Choishen. And any time when was a national dilemma whether to go to a war or not, and typically the king himself, he used the one who was exposed to this dilemma, used to go to the kohen, the way he used to do, standing in front of him and saying quietly the same tone as we are verbalizing our words throughout our prayer, throughout Shemona Esrei. That's how quiet he was. 1 question per visit, no more than 1 question. If it was more than 1, he was only answered the first one. And let's say if the question was, let's go to a war or not, so the kohen immediately was able to see those letters in the Choishen that suddenly were shining. Those shining letters, they were shining in a way that he can read whether go or not to go. That's how decisions were made in those days in the first temple. Second temple was no Urim veTumim. However, according to the Rambam, they were still doing the Choishen in order to have those 8 garments. So it's clearly that the view of the Rambam by definition of the Urim veTumim is just a reference to the same stones that were consisting in the Choishen. Towards the end, the Rambam writes a very interesting concept that it mentioned in the Tanakh that even people who were not Kohanim, they were only prophets, they were wearing those aprons. They were not aprons that consisting of the same material as the high priest were wearing, but nevertheless they were type of aprons indicating that those people who are wearing, they are prophets. That's what the Rambam concludes our perek. And the Rebbe is asking, here we is not dealing with the rules of prophets. We already dealt about prophets in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. Why is he bringing it in Hilchos Klei Hamikdash? And the answer that even prophets, essentially, they are service people. What a Kohen really is, what a Novi really is, he is exactly serving primarily as a Kohen. But how is he serving the nation? He is serving the nation via prophecy. For that reason, he was wearing an ephod bud. In the final chapter of today's shiur, which is the first shiur of Bias, entry to the temple, is the prohibition of a Kohen to enter drunk. What does it mean drunk? If he drank a revi'is yain, is a size of 2 finger by 2.5 fingers square of wine, which is, I would say, about a quarter of a typical cup at once. If he drank it, his avoido will be disqualified. He is subject to heavenly death. Not only a Kohen is forbidden, but a rabbi who is giving halachic instruction, he is also forbidden in a state of drunkenness to give halachic instruction. Though he is permitted to teach, but not to give instruction. People who are serving in the temple, they are permitted at night to drink, because night is not a time of service, but they are forbidden by day. If a person doesn't know when he is serving, he knows that he is part of the mishmoris, of the shifts who need to work in the temple, but he doesn't know when will it be his shift, he is always forbidden, because who knows, maybe he will be called in a minute. Today, seemingly, this is the case, that Kohanim who don't know when is their shift. However, the Rambam says today, Kalkoloseinu zohi takonoseinu. Our problem is our solution. The problem that today we have not been appointed to any shift. So for that reason, the Kohanim, they have a go ahead in these days to drink as much as they can afford. A person, a Kohen, who is puaseo, he has hair, he grew hair more than 30 days, he is forbidden to work, though that he is subject to death if he is doing the holy service. Nevertheless, his avoido will be kosher, which means the korban that he was offering will be kosher. He has violated something that is subject to death, but the avoido. Same thing is also a person who is Kuab Godim, he has torn clothes, he is also forbidden to enter to the Beis Hamikdash, and a Kohen who served in the temple in a state of Kuab Godim is exactly the same status as he served Puaroish without taking a haircut. By the way, also a person who is not a Kohen, he is not allowed to enter with torn garments or heavy hair unstyled and unorganized to the temple, just as a state of disrespect, but he's not going to be subject to death. Also, if a person enters with organized long hair in a proper manner, for Israel it's fine, but for a Kohen it's a problem. Thank you very much. Nagmar Simon Toivo.